10.24 with the gateway of 192.168.1.1. Then we should go to the VPC2 IP 192.168.2.10 with the mask of 24 and gateway of 192.168.2.1. And finally VPC3 IP 192.168.3.10 with the mask of 24 and the gateway of 3.1. Now we can check the connectivity between VPCs and their default gateway. From VPC1, ping 192.168.1.1. we have connectivity. From VPC2, ping 192.168, for example, 2.1. Yes, we have connectivity. And finally VPC3, ping 192.168.3.1. Look at here, we have connectivity, but we don't have connectivity, for example, from VPC1 to the 192.168.2.10, the IP address of VPC2. Why? Because we didn't enable the LISP in this scenario. Let me configure the LISP in this scenario, and after that we will have connectivity between the VPCs. This is the, for example, fourth step. Okay, let me to start the fourth steps, and this is the configuration of the LISP. The first things that I should mention is that if you need to configure the feature LISP, you need this license in the NX OS. You should have transport service license. If you have this license, you are allowed to the configuration of the LISP. And LISP is a licensed feature in the NX OS. Okay, in NX OS you need the transport service license for using the LISP. Okay, let me enabling LISP on the NX OS 1, NX OS 2, and NX OS 2. How we can configure it? The first command that you should configure is the, for example, enabling this feature switch config. You should use feature LISP. Let me to show you. In the, for example, NX OS 1, starting from NX OS 1, I'm using the feature LISP. Look at here. After these commands, the LISP package license not installed, this feature will be shut down after grace period. We are using grace period license, but you need transport service package. Okay, this is the first command, the feature LISP. And the second command, in NX OS, we don't use the router LISP, for example, commands such as the iOS. We are using another command. You know that this is the ETR and also ITR. This switch function is ETR and also ITR. Look at here. If you need to configure a switch as the IPv4 ETR, you should use the simple command IPv4 LISP or IP LISP. Look at here, IP LISP ETR. That's it. If you need to configure ITR, IP LISP ITR. Okay, and if you need to configure a switch as ITR and also ETR, you can configure IP LISP ITR -ETR. That's it. It's so easy. Let me to write here IP LISP. Okay, you can use this option ITR, only ETR, and also ITR and ETR for the XTRs. This is the XTR. Because of that, I'm using the IP LISP ITR ETR. This is the first command. The second command is the, for example, configuring for ITR a map resolver. Okay, you can use this command again, IP LISP. All commands should be start with the IP LISP. IP means IPv4, LISP means the LISP process. IP LISP. You want to configure the map resolver for the ITR. You should use IP LISP ITR, then map resolver. So easy and similar to the iOS. IP LISP ETR. In iOS, we are using all of these commands under the router LISP. But here, IP LISP ITR map resolver, then the IP address of the map resolver in IPv4 or IPv6. For example, here we have the Quad 4 as the map resolver. That's it. This is the configuration of the map resolver in a switch. Let me to write here switch config. As you can see, all of this configuration now is occurring in the for example switch config, not in a router LISP mode. For example, IP LISP ITR map resolver, then the IP address of the map resolver. The next command is the map server command, IP lisp etr map server. Let me to write here IP lisp etr map server, then the IP address of the map server. And after that, we should configure a key, for example, key for authentication key, authentication key. Let me to use this command in switch 1, IP lisp etr map server quad 4 again, and we can use the key, for example, Cisco. That's it. This is a configuration of the map server. And we configured this switch as the XTR with the IP lisp ITR. And then we configured the map server and map resolver IP address. Now we should advertise the, for example, EID prefix of 192.168.10/24 to the NXOS font. The command is so easy. Let me to configure it. You should use again IP lisp database, okay, IP lisp database mapping. Then first we should mention the EID prefix, after that the RLOOK, and then we have, you know that we have priority, and then wait, okay. And after that, let me to configure in the switch 1 IP lisp, then database mapping 192.168.10/24. the RLOOK is quad 1 and priority 1 and wait, for example, 100. And this is the configuration of the Lisp on the switch 1 as the XTR. And also, if you need to change the map request source, you can use this command IP lisp map request source IP address. It's not mandatory, but maybe it's recommended. Very good. This is the configuration of Lisp on the switch 1, switch 2, switch 3 as the XTRs. Let me to configure these commands on all of these switches, starting from the XTR1. I configure XTR1, but it's good to write here the configuration. The first command is conft, and then IP. The first we should enable the feature Lisp, then IP lisp ITR ETR. The next command is IP lisp ITR map resolver, okay, quad 4, and then IP lisp ETR map server, then quad 4, and the key is Cisco in this scenario. And after that, IP lisp database mapping 192.168.10/24 with the RLOOK address of quad 1 and the priority of 1 and the weight of 100, for example. Let's copy this configuration for the XTR2 and also XTR3. This is XTR2 feature list. All of the configuration is same, and except the database mapping, IP lisp database mapping 192.168.20 with the RLOOK of quad 2, priority 1, weight 100. And finally, we have XTR3, and the EID is 192.168.30/24, and RLOOK is quad 3 with priority 1, weight 100. This is the configuration of the XTRs. First, we should copy the configuration of XTR2. This is the configuration of the XTR2 in the NXOS2. Okay, let me check the configuration. Yes, everything now is okay. Very good, very good. Let's copy the configuration of XTR3, copy the configuration, pasting on the NXOS3. Now we configure the NXOS1. If you want, you can check the, for example, enabling the Lisp in the XTR. We can use the show IP Lisp commands, such as the iOS show IP Lisp. Look at here. In show IP Lisp, we see that this router, the XTR3 NXOS3, is the Ingress Tunnel Router, and also Egress Tunnel Router. Ingress Tunnel Router enabled, Egress Tunnel Router enabled. ITR map resolver is quad 4, ETR map server is quad 4. You know it. And also in NXOS2, for example, the result is same. Very good. Let's start with the config.